At Direct Service Garage Doors, we are your one-stop shop for all things garage door. From garage door repair and broken spring replacement to new garage doors and openers, we do it all. We're proud to be among the highest-rated local garage door companies in all of Central Arkansas. Our highly trained technicians are available 24 hours a day at no extra cost to you. So if you have an emergency, call us today, 501-244-3667, or visit our website at directserviceoverhead.com. Don't wait days. We'll fix it now.
Yo, what's going on, Arkansas Razorback fans? Welcome to Hogville Net YouTube. Otis Kirk and I are gonna break down this Alabama game for you. We're changing the time. These will not be 60 minutes. They're gonna be 30 minutes. That's our goal, to keep it at 30 minutes. I'm in a great mood. I'm feeling good, Otis. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. I saw you picked Arkansas to beat Alabama, man. I tell you what, I didn't have the guts to do it, but it would not surprise me if that happened. I don't think it will, but it wouldn't surprise me. But no, I mean, that was a good pick. I like that. I like that you stepped out and did that. It's so easy when Alabama plays, no matter who they're playing, just to pick Alabama and roll with it. And I did that, but what I've said, I'm not going to pick Arkansas to beat them till they beat them. And then, I did the same thing with A&M in the past. I said, I'm not going to pick Arkansas anymore. I'd pick Arkansas. They'd lose to A&M. But I know we're going to get into it, but I think that's going to be a lot better game tomorrow than people think. I think they're putting too much on the Arkansas loss to A&M. Got to remember, Alabama lost to them last year. And by the way, folks, I apologize for last week. I was having all kinds of health. I'd already done a 30-minute show for Dudley. I was having trouble breathing. I was having trouble talking. And I know it's annoying to y'all, and I apologize. I'm dealing with some issues, and till I get them off. But I feel great now, and I don't have that issue today. And I know it's going to be a lot cleaner show than the one last week. I apologize to Ty as well, because I couldn't talk without having trouble breathing and stuff. It's just part of what I'm going through, man.
Yeah, people should understand. Look, I mean, you were sick recently, and we had all that. And, of course, you had to miss some time. And what's funny is I think you did better than anybody who was complaining about it. I don't think they could do anything near close to how well you did. So
I haven't seen anyone complain. I'm sure they probably have, but I don't read. I haven't seen anyone. It was me being conscious. I knew what was happening, and I was struggling. And I'd already done a 30-minute show in place of Dudley on another deal earlier that morning, I haven't seen any complaints. No one said anything to me. I'm sure they probably have out there in cyberspace, but I'm not worried about that. I'm just saying, from my standpoint, I'm conscious of stuff, self-conscious stuff like that, and I knew I was struggling, and I wanted to apologize up front. It's going to be difficult to listen to that.
Well, regardless, I thought it was a great show last week, and it's going to be even better this week, because it's what we do here on Hogville YouTube. We give you guys the best from the best, guys like Otis Kirk, Dudley Dawson, Kevin McPherson. Kevin and I did an interview yesterday that went for 60 minutes. It was fantastic. I thought Kevin delivered well on basketball. I wanted to ask Kevin some football stuff, but we just didn't have time for it yesterday, because he does help us out on the football side of things as well. He also is leading us in picks.
That's got to stop, man. Even if I have to cheat and change a couple of his picks, we can't let a basketball guy beat us, man. We can't do it.
I know it.
I'm gonna have to cheat Kevin somewhere along the way if he don't miss some picks. Because and by the way, Kevin stepped out and picked Arkansas too. You, John, and Kevin. The reason I can say this stuff, because the story's out there, so anybody who wants to read it can already see it. I'm not giving away stuff before it happened. The story was posted earlier, but you, John, and Kevin stepped out there and picked Arkansas. Dudley and I picked Alabama. So I admire you guys for that. I admire you. It's just so easy, as I said, to just pick Alabama no matter who they're playing, and your record's going to be good because they're going to win most of the time, not all the time. But that 20-19 over Texas has me a little bit leery of, and the teams they've beaten. I'm not sure Arkansas wouldn't have beaten them in a similar fashion, Ty. They're not very good. Utah State, I had a guy tell me, but they were good last year. I said, that was last year, buddy. They lost to Weber State, got stomped by Weber State this year. They're 1-3. Utah State is. Louisiana Monroe hadn't been good in years. And then Vanderbilt's Vanderbilt. Yeah, they've won some games. Apparently Hawaii had just completely sucks, man.
Apparently Hawaii is really bad. Here's the pick so far as they stand. Kevin McPherson is 43-6. I am 42-7. 41-8 is you and Otis Kirk, and then John, our photographer, is 39-10. I fully expect this thing to flip as the year goes on. I think I'm probably going to start to drop. I did put I do a little bit of homework on all my games, so I don't make all these picks lightly, but I also don't go too heavy into the numbers when I do my picks because I don't have that kind of time, and it's also just for fun. But I do a little bit of homework, and kind of what you said about Alabama had me thinking a little bit. You know, the way they've performed on the road. It wasn't just Texas this year, but it's also their last 5 away games. Well, I mean, we know they lost to A&M, and I get it. That was a year ago, but sometimes a trend is a trend for a reason. Kind of made me wonder, is there a possibility here there's going to be 70,000 plus screaming fans in a stadium that I believe is louder than it was the last time Alabama was in Fayetteville?
Yeah.
Crowd's going to play a factor. I do look at A&M stats. They are like top 10 in almost every defensive stat, but it's like, well, wait a minute, but who have they played? Their most difficult game was on the road against Texas. Like you mentioned, the other wins, they're not great wins. I would argue Arkansas has played a more difficult schedule up until this point. Maybe not by a large margin, but I do think I think some things stand out for me. And I do believe too, like I said in that article, I don't want to give away too much, but please, by the way, hogville.net, go read. It's free. It's there. It's available. Hell, I'll give you the link right now.
5 pickers.
Here's the link here for you guys. But it's all about how Arkansas responds after this A&M loss, Otis. That's what has me the most curious about this game. Do they let that game linger around a little bit, that loss, and they let, it gets to them and they get curb stomped by Alabama, or do they use it as motivation?
I think they use it as motivation. I really do, Ty. I think they know, and I had a guy tell me Saturday night, you guys all said A&M wasn't any good, wasn't that good. Well, I said it before the game. I said it on this show. I've said it all. See, I still don't think they're any good, and they beat Arkansas. Arkansas beat themselves. I think Arkansas knows that they really shot themselves in the foot last week. I mean, those plays have been talked about. There's no point in me going into fumbles and substitutions and all that. But that's been written over and over and over by me and others. But I just think Arkansas didn't leave there Saturday night thinking, well, we weren't as good as we thought we were. And A&M just better than us, and they beat us. Now we're going to get stomped by Alabama. I don't see that. I think this team's got enough leaders like KJ and Poole and all those guys. I mean, Sanders, I don't think they're going to – Hazelwood is a great leader. Dominic, I mean, I don't think they're going to let Alabama come in here and just curb stomp them. I think it's going to be a really good ball game. I think Arkansas has a chance, but I may be wrong, Ty. We'll know. Well, no, it'll be Saturday. I started to say we'll know tomorrow, but this is Thursday. But no, we'll know Saturday if they've got a hangover. Because I'm going to tell you, if you've got a hangover with the schedule they've got, this thing can turn into 4 straight losses instead of a loss to A&M. You could not have a hangover and still lose to Alabama, Mississippi State, and BYU. I mean, you could be playing your top ball and not win any of those games. You got a hangover. You could get embarrassed in the next 3 weeks, Ty. Fortunately, if you can salvage some of this, and we talked about this on the show in preseason, how they need to be 4-0 or 3-1 at worst coming out of September. Well, they're 3-1, so they got there barely, but they got there. But now Auburn in October probably not as good as I thought they would be. So okay, so you got maybe an easier game there than thought, but you get into November, you've got Ole Miss and LSU are better than most thought, Ty. So I mean. You can't have a hangover. You have a hangover that you think you got an A&M hangover. Wait till you lose 4 in a row.
Yeah, it could, and not only that, but they could be flat out ugly losses too. Yeah. I go back to last year, the way they lost to some games they had no business losing. Auburn is one that stands out, but this is one of those games where if it's a close loss, you can take positives from that, but. The biggest negative being then at that point, we haven't beaten them in over 16 years, right? And does that now trickle into the fact how poorly you played against A&M? Now you've lost to Alabama at home. Well, now you've got your next opponent right after that that's going to be tough, and the opponent after that. They're going to have to bounce back sooner than later, Otis, to avoid that losing streak.
Yeah. You've got to go up here and play your best game against Alabama. And you play your best game. You may still lose the game, but you can come out of that game. And I know they're not into close losses and that. I know that, but I'm just saying from my perspective and what you've said too, Ty. You play respectable against against Alabama. Then you go to Mississippi State. Look, Mississippi State and BYU are very good teams, and they're hard to beat there, but they're not unbeatable.
Yeah.
And so if you get out of Alabama with some momentum, you've got a chance to turn some things around here in October and maybe do a lot better than you thought you would. Because Mississippi State and BYU are not unbeatable. They're very good teams. They're capable of beating Arkansas, and they're capable of beating them pretty bad. But they're not unbeatable by any stretch. I don't think Alabama's unbeatable. I mean, Texas had a chance to beat them. And I'm going to tell you, every year we keep hearing from all those Texas homers, Texas is back, Texas is back. No, they're not. They ain't been back in years, and they're not back this year. And Texas Tech beat them, and I was tickled to death about it. I can't stand the Longhorns. I get tired of hearing they're back every year. I've been in the press box when Arkansas beat them. Some of the reporters down there nearly cry. I mean, it's sad to watch the stuff that goes on with Texas. I mean, they want them to be, and the national polls are the same way. They want Texas to be good so bad. They'll rank them in the top 10, top 15 every year, and they have no business there. They have zero business there. It's kind of like I said about Arkansas playing Alabama in my picks. I'm not going to pick Arkansas till they beat Alabama, Ty.
Right.
And it's like, let's don't build Texas up to be something they're not till they're there, and they're not there. They lost. Yeah, they played Alabama close. Who knows how much Alabama was focused on that game? I think they were. But for whatever reason, and I didn't get to see all the games, so I can't comment on it completely. But I was watching bits and pieces of it. But that was an impressive game to only lose to Alabama 20-19. The most impressive thing about that might have been holding Alabama to 20 points, Ty. Hold Bryce Young in Alabama to 20 points. That's probably what was about as impressive. But no, I think Arkansas has a chance to. I think they've got a chance to snap that losing streak this weekend. Obviously, I'm picking Alabama, but it wouldn't surprise me if Arkansas won. I think Alabama is not quite as good as we think they are. I actually was impressed with Arkansas. They've just got to cut out the mistakes. I mean, they tried to give the game away down there in A&M at Arlington, and they still nearly won the ball game. So Arkansas probably impressed me a little bit more. We have said, and I've written in articles, they've got to cut out the turnover. They've got to cut out the penalties, and they did cut back on the penalties. And I don't know about how much. I have people messaging me saying the defense played a lot better against A&M. Was that because they're better, or and I know Slusher coming back helped, or was that because Max Johnson's just not that good a quarterback and could expose them? That's what I want to know. And I tend to think part of it is Max Johnson's not that good a quarterback and he couldn't expose them for what they do. But they did play better. I will say that for whatever reason. But we'll see.
Getting into this game, fast forwarding to this weekend, Alabama favored. It's 93% on the good old football power index at ESPN. I know people don't like it. I think it's actually undefeated on Arkansas picks so far. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's 4 for 4. I'm not. I can't remember. I think it picked us against Cincy, South Carolina, and of course Missouri State. I think it picked against Arkansas against A&M. It's 93% in favor of Alabama right now, and right now the spread's at 17 points. Otis, what do they have to do against Alabama? What do they do to slow down this offense? You said they only put 20 on Texas. That was the most impressive part of that game. What does Arkansas do to maybe repeat what Texas was able to do against Bryce Young and that Crimson Tide offense?
I think first they've got to cut out the turnovers, Tide. They've just got to do that. I mean, they just cannot turn the ball over. You know, KJ had the turnover in the red zone against the Aggie. Rocket Sanders had the turnover in the red zone against Missouri State. You've got to stop that. And when they get down there in the red zone, they've got to score touchdowns. And they've actually, when they haven't turned the ball over, they've actually done a good job of getting touchdowns instead of field goals in the red zone. They've done a good job of that if they just stop turning the ball over. But I think they've got to put pressure on Bryce. I think the defensive line, they've allowed quite a few sacks, and Alabama's defense is not forcing turnovers. I think they've only forced 3 turnovers all year. Will Anderson had an interception. He returned 25 yards for a touchdown. But for the most part, Alabama's defense, and I imagine part of that is they're blowing out these opponents, so they're not really pressuring in the second half of most of these games. I get that. Yeah. But I think Arkansas has got to cut out the turnovers. They've got to continue to cut back on the penalties. That has just been a killer all season. They'll have a big play, flag, it comes back. Can't do that against them. It's going to take a near perfect game. I mean, KJ has got to be on. The receivers can't drop passes. If Arkansas avoids turnovers, avoids just silly mistakes like sticking the ball out there when it's not necessary, and just beat them with your best players. When you're moving the ball and they're deep in you're in their territory, don't substitute and try trick plays. Man, go at them. Beat them with your best players. There's a fine line between keep doing the same thing till they stop it, or not necessarily keep doing the same thing, but don't try to change things up when it's working. There's no need when you're driving it right down their throats. You don't need a trick play, and so those are things I think, Ty, just play a clean game. Cut out the turnovers, cut out the penalties. Those 2 things right there. And also pressure Bryce Young. Texas did a good job of pressuring him. And Arkansas's got the number 1 sack team in the country. With Drew Sanders, Jordan Dominic, people like that, Zach Williams, you can pressure. They've got guys that's capable of pressuring Bryce Young. You cannot let Bryce Young have all day to run and pass and get out there. He will kill you if you do that. He will absolutely murder you if you give him plenty of time and let him get comfortable in the pocket or running when he wants to, or passing when he wants to. You've got to dictate some of that to him. You do that with pressure.
Yeah, and he has been pressured a little bit this year.
Yeah.
So I think it's absolutely possible. And like you said, Arkansas leads the country in sacks. Drew Sanders leads I think he's either tied for first or he's in the lone spot for the most sacks this year. That will level out. Mel Kiper has him as the number 1 inside linebacker on his draft board, or at least he did a week ago. Something else that has me wondering too about this Alabama matchup, and something they cannot squander, are red zone opportunities. And they're 103rd in the country in red zone offense. They've made 17 trips into the opponent's red zone. They've only come away with actual touchdowns 11 times out of 17. You may say, well, that's Arkansas. Not talking about Arkansas. Their red zone offense has not been effective. They're scoring about 76% of the time overall. That's including field goals overall in the red zone. That may not be atrocious at this point in time in the year. That's still you're ranked in the bottom in that category. And as the year leads on, if you don't correct this, that number is going to stretch out even further. And they need more attempts in the red zone. I want to see them finish off some drives. I think they fumbled back-to-back games at the goal line now on offense. Yeah. The play calling has just been confusing at times. Like you said, they're having success in the north-south run game. Why are we trying this tomfoolery trick play stuff when you're clearly doing what you can on the ground, north-south running? Why go away from that? If you're going to go away from it, maybe actually try forward passing. Maybe try passes beyond the line of scrimmage. Try to stretch the secondary out. That you could understand, but they're doing some of this trick play stuff. It's almost like when they get on the other side of the field, it's almost like they just don't know what they're doing anymore. I don't know what it is. They've had success in the first quarter. Another thing that's had me a little bit confused is third quarter play. I think they've been outscored. It's pretty bad in the third quarter. It's like 40.
I actually wrote an article on that this week, Ty.
Yep. You did. Do you want to go in and talk about that for a little bit? Because I think that is crucial. Third quarter play, obviously the beginning of the second half, it's crucial. You've got to come out, especially in these tight games, and you've got to put up your best, make those adjustments. You want to talk about their third quarter play?
Well, Saturday night, for instance, it was 10-0 in the third quarter for A&M. Arkansas was up 14-13 at halftime. Even after all the mess ups and the fumbles and this and that, they still led 14-13 at halftime. Now, I get all the momentum had shifted to A&M at that point. I fully get that. But you can't come out in the second half. They built a 23-14 lead. Well, then, Arkansas has dominated the fourth quarter, except I believe I read where it was 7-7 against Cincinnati in the first quarter, or I believe I saw that when I was doing that story. But, and like I said, I didn't see the game, but they pretty well, the fourth quarter won the Missouri State game. The fourth quarter, they were only leading, 21-16 against South Carolina entering the fourth quarter, and they dominated that quarter. So Arkansas has got to come out and not dig themselves a hole in the third quarter. Fortunately, Alabama will smoke you if you go a quarter playing flat ball like Arkansas has 15 minutes after halftime. Sam talked about that this week. I wrote a story about it. You got to have more balance. You cannot dig yourself. You can't count on that. That's what happened Saturday night. That fourth quarter comeback didn't come back because it came up short because they dug themselves a hole in the third quarter that they had to keep digging out of. And you felt like when they're driving there at the end before the snap went bad and then the missed field goal that they were probably going to dig themselves out of it and win another game in the fourth quarter. But it didn't happen. And that's what happens when you dig yourself in a hole. And you just they've got to figure out. I don't know. I mean, Sam Pittman was asked. He said, I don't know what's happening in the third quarter. Obviously, if he doesn't know, then we're not expected to know. But whatever it is, it's his job, not ours, to fix it. And Sam's got to fix it. And therefore, we'll see how that works. But I just don't know, man. I mean, it's just a flat stat that if they're digging themselves a hole. And you can't count on Alabama, Mississippi State, and BYU of digging yourselves out of a hole in the fourth quarter. Those teams are better than the teams they did that against earlier, South Carolina, Missouri State, and even Cincinnati. These teams are better than that, Ty. The next three teams are. And therefore, you can just not dig yourself a hole like that.
Looking at these teams side by side, Alabama, again, you have to consider the schedule, of course, but just looking at it, we're 4 games in. There is some point to this. Alabama's averaging 48 points a game, Arkansas 33. They're only giving up 7 points a game, Arkansas 26. But the biggest disparity, yards allowed. Exactly 200 yards allowed per game difference between these two. Alabama just giving up 201. Arkansas giving up a whopping 401 points. Arkansas's giving up 302 per game through the air. Alabama just 138. In the stat that everybody wants to circle every time you play someone, it's like, well, how good's the run defense? Well, they're giving up just 62 yards a game on the ground versus Arkansas at 99 yards allowed defensively. Arkansas is running the ball well, but so is Bama. They're averaging 235 on offense per game on the ground. Arkansas at 243. They're throwing the ball pretty well. I'm seeing Bryce Young tuck it and run more. I don't know if they're better or worse compared to last year at this point in time, but they are doing some things relatively better. I think Bryce Young is a little bit better runner than what he was a year ago. Of course, he was a great runner a year ago.
Yeah.
But
Heisman Trophy winner.
He's a Heisman Trophy guy, yeah, for sure. But he seems like he's a little more ballsy when it comes to tucking it and running it and wanting to actually get some yardage. I saw him avoid a sack against Texas that was huge. I mean, he ducked under the defender. He's special, man, and they're going to have to figure out how to contain him.
He's a year older, so he's a lot more experienced. That 1 year makes a ton of difference. It makes a ton of difference in your confidence, and he's learned that in a year. I voted for him for the Heisman last year. Seldom does the guy I vote for win it. He did. Seriously, I usually vote for somebody that doesn't win it, but he won it. He's a year older, year wiser, and believe me, that makes a difference. And I don't know. The little bit I've seen Alabama, especially in the games where it was still a ball game, I don't know if their offensive line is as good as it was last year. I think he's had to get a little bit better run because I think he's getting a little bit more pressure this year than he got last year. There was times last year where I watched them and Ty, other than Georgia, he could just stand up. Well, even the first game against Georgia, he stood in that pocket quite a while. And I think he's had to become a better runner in the sense that I think he's had to scramble more. I don't know if their offensive line is as good as it was last year. It may be. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't.
So far, I don't think it is.
And that's all we can go on so far. You said, I mean, 4 games is what we've got to go on. I've seen very limited action of Alabama because I obviously travel. or I'm at the stadium and I'm not able to sit and watch college football all the time. I didn't even see the first week of anything, Cincinnati or any of them. So, I mean, I missed a week, and then 3 weeks I've been at the stadium twice here, driving to Arlington, and it took, we're 45 minutes away from the stadium at our hotel Saturday. So we spent basically an hour going over and an hour coming back. We were watching a little college football at the hotel before we left. But so I haven't got to see much of Alabama, but I'm just the highlights I've seen and just the stats. And that's what I have a lot to have to go by when I write stories. I just don't think their offensive lines is good. I think he's had to step up. But I'm going to tell you, if Bryce Young is comfortable Saturday, Ty, it could get ugly. If he's comfortable out there Saturday, it could get very ugly. That kid is a heck of a quarterback. And anybody that says, had somebody message me and say he's overrated, and let me tell you, they ain't nothing overrated about that. And Roger's right. They've got to tackle well. I think we've said that, but if we didn't, that's been another issue the tackling has. I mean, but the pass defense, the tackling, it just hasn't been good. I mean, the secondary played better Saturday night. I don't know how much of that is Max Johnson, how much of it was they've improved. Slusher coming back did help. I said that earlier. I'll say it again. But they've got to play better. They've got to play they've got to play their best game Saturday. Not better. They've got to play the best game.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Bumper Pool has missed a lot of tackles. Simeon Blair. I mean, you name it. Even Hudson Clark, who I thought was one of the better tackling defensive backs, has missed tackles. And to Dudley's point, they didn't practice that a whole lot during fall camp. You and I know it. I was there. I've been there. I haven't missed too many practices. I only missed 2 practices all through fall camp. And what little we get to see, it certainly didn't look like the physical camp that we were told about the previous fall. But again, we only get to see a little bit. Spawn Quest Gaming says Arkansas has played much, much tougher competition. Stop just looking at the numbers. Listen, we do need to bring up the numbers because they are relevant to some extent. You can argue that they've only played who they've played, but that's just it. They've played who they have played, and these are the numbers they've accumulated. I do think the numbers tell a part of the story, not the entire story. Alabama, if you're going to tell me that all those numbers are skewed, all those numbers, and they're not relevant, I think you're wrong. I think last year was evident of that. Those numbers did rack up, and they mattered at the end of the year. Of course, it didn't matter when they played Georgia in the national title game, though.
Ty, one thing, too, you got to keep in mind when we were talking about these numbers, about they don't mean anything. You got to understand they've played their second and third team a lot, so those numbers are really skewed in the sense that it probably doesn't indicate how good they are in some ways.
Exactly.
3 of those games they've substituted out. If Bryce Young had played the 4 games, all 4 games, full game, those stats, those numbers would be even more impressive. So you've got to understand that, those numbers do matter, and they're probably a little bit, if they're anything, they're probably undersold because of the amount of substitutes that they've played. I mean, Will Anderson has 20 tackles. If he'd have played 4 games, full games, he'd have more than 20 tackles, I can assure you.
More sacks.
Right.
More sacks, too.
Right.
Yeah.
He's got 4.5, I believe, sacks. I think 4.5 sacks.
Yeah.
I believe that's right. And, I wrote a story for the newspapers this morning. I believe it was 4.5, 20 tackles, 4.5 sacks. And he did intercept a pass. He took 25 yards for a touchdown. Do you know who that was against, Ty? I don't. The 25-yard
Monroe? Was that early on?
It may very well be. I don't know who it was against. I just know he had an interception that he took back 25 yards for a touchdown. That's impressive for a linebacker. I mean, that kid can play. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I don't think I've told this, but he was second on my Heisman Trophy ballot last year. I had Bryce 1 and Will number 2. I don't remember who I had number 3, but I had those 2 kids from Alabama 1 and 2 on my ballot last year. Ty.
He's something special, man. He's
the first player on that team. I mean, to be honest,
he may be the best player in the country. I think
exactly.
He's up there as one of the top 3 players in the country right now. It's awesome to hear Drew Sanders' name mentioned as the number 1 inside linebacker. I hope he stays there because I really don't remember the last time an Arkansas linebacker had this much hype around him this point in the season. I really don't. So it's pretty special to see that, all because of the transfer portal, ladies and gentlemen.
We were told for a while you couldn't recruit linebackers to Arkansas. That's what we were told. A couple of previous coaches told us that. So it's so hard to get linebackers to come to Arkansas. Michael hasn't had any issue getting linebackers to Arkansas. He and Barry and Sam, they've gotten plenty of linebackers to Arkansas. They've got guys like Jordan Crook, Jackson Woodard. They've got Manny Powell. I mean, Caden Henley. They've got Poopall. They've got guys on the bench that can play linebacker in the SEC.
Yeah. Only way
I agree. A1 Tech, perfect. Play a clean game. It's got to be a clean game. If it's not a clean game, you can forget it. Arkansas can't go out there and fumble and shoot themselves in the foot. I actually was surprised when Ty said that about the red zone because I thought they were doing better in the red zone. I will say this: they at least tried to get touchdowns down there for the most part. Couple of those, you said 11 out of 17, but 2 of those were just simply that KJ and Rocket fumbled. So you cannot. That's not even getting field goals. That's just giving points away, right? I mean, that's just donating to the opponent right there. When you do that in the red zone, you're just because instead of getting 6, they were going to get 6 against Missouri State. There was no doubt. If Rocket doesn't fumble, and to me, it's 1st and goal from the 3 at A&M. KJ just needs to either run it or hand the ball off. You've got big running backs. You've got Rocket. You've got Dominic. You've got AJ Green. You've got guys that can get in the end zone and use that. Don't be trying to stick the ball out. But be aggressive. Power their butts drive them into the end zone. You got a big experienced offensive line. But yeah, A1 Tech's right. I think that's his name. You've got to play a clean game. There's no that probably covers most of it right there. They've got to play a clean game. And that includes the penalties got to be cut out. And they did a better job, if I'm not mistaken, against him on the penalties. But they've got to continue. You cannot have 10 to 12 penalties and double your opponent in a number of penalties and yardage and win the ball game. There's these next 3 games. And probably you can go beyond that. Even Auburn, they can't give the game. If they give the game to Auburn, Auburn will take it. Auburn's not completely just terrible. They're not very good. But at Auburn, who knows who will be coaching then? Who's
going to be playing quarterback?
Lose. I believe they play LSU. I wrote my predictions, and I think some Auburn fans were hoping more they lose so they can fire Hudson than they win. And I know they're going to probably try for Deion Sanders after the season. I don't know who will be the interim coach, but I think that's their goal. I think that's what them people down there they're never happy with the coach. I wish them all the bad luck in the world because I think they screwed over Gus with their firing of him. They're never happy with the coach down there. They're never satisfied. They want all they think of is let's fire the coach. Fire the coach. Yeah, I'm telling you, man, there's not a lot of home run hires out here right now. I'm glad Sam Pittman's at Arkansas. Because right now I see the names being linked to Nebraska. Those are good names, Ty, but those are not can't miss prospects.
Right.
People throw out Urban Meyer. Who knows what Urban's going to do?
Yeah, all kinds of names. Who knows how this thing winds up? And like you said, who knows if Brian Harson's even going to be coaching Auburn by the time Arkansas plays them?
That's what. And so you don't know how they're going to be playing at the time. Sometimes you fire a coach and it fires the team up. So Arkansas may get a pretty good battle against. I don't think you can go to Auburn expecting anything but a great battle going on down there, Ty. For Arkansas. So therefore, we can go beyond 3 games. They will get an open week this season before they play Auburn. I thought last year they played Auburn. I thought they were going in kind of on one leg in many cases. They were beat up. I want to say that was their 8th straight game or something, 7th or 8th. It was up there. It was up there. And they were beat up, Ty, and Auburn called them at the right time. I think this year Arkansas is going to get a bye. Yeah. And this bye really comes at a great time because if you do lose these next 3 games, you're 3-4, you're going to have to regroup, and nothing could help you better than a bye week. And even if they're 4-3 or 5-2, I think that bye week really comes at a great time this season, right in the middle of that October stretch, because that October stretch. And now November's looking tougher than it was because LSU's pretty good, and so is Ole Miss. That Ole Miss Kentucky game Saturday, Ty, is going to be a good one to watch as well.
It is, yeah. There's a couple of interesting games for sure this weekend. So we'll try to get you guys all caught up on Saturday on the post game show here. I don't know the lineup just yet. I'm assuming it's going to be me and then Otis and then Dudley Dawson will probably be the lineup for Saturday night on the post game show. Thanks to Otis for taking a little time out of his Thursday morning. This was fun as always. Thank you guys. Remember to go to hogville.net for all the latest and greatest from the greatest, Otis Kirk, Dudley Dawson, and Kevin McPherson. If you're new here, make sure you subscribe to the channel and share, and make sure you hit the like button. Until Saturday night, we'll see you then.
Thanks, Ty.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it, man. It's a good one.